Hello everyone, it's Melanie here with Vintage Hill Studio. I'm so glad you dropped by today. I'm going to be making a cute autumn card using the cover of a paper pad. You know I love to recycle, reuse, repurpose. Well, that's what I'm going to do to make this card today. So follow along. I'll be using this window frames die from Sizzix, and here is the fabulous cover from that paper pad. Now look at all the great patterns on here. I just saw a need to reuse this. And so when I bring over my die, you will see that if I lay this out, I will be able to use these cute patterns right here on the front of this cover. Now this is a heavyweight cardstock, so it lends itself well to this. There's also a smaller die that goes with this. I won't be using that today. Now I will take my Caterpillar Pro. This is a great paper cutter, folks. If you've never tried it, it cuts like butter. Getting this trimmed down so that I can work with my window die and get that run through my Sizzix die cutting machine. I'm going to get at least 6 of those and 6 of another color. I really like that gingham, but it didn't line up correctly, so I'll just shift over and get my squares cut out. To help me with that, I just used a little bit of washi tape, ran that through my die cutting machine, and you can see the resulting squares that I can get out of the cover of that paper pad. Okay, I'll take another run at it. Now I have my 12 patterned squares. Now the great thing about using the cover from a paper pad is that all of these papers coordinate beautifully with the patterns that were used on the cover. So this makes it a little easier to finish out your card. Now because I have such busy little patterns that I picked, I'm going to choose a more subdued background paper for the actual frame. And I chose to go with this green. I'll just move my little squares out of the way. I will be using the frame again on the green and this exterior rectangle that also came with the Sizzix die. Get that all removed. I think I'm going to keep these little green squares for a future project, but I'll get the frame removed right here so you can see the end result. Alright, and then these squares will just simply pop right back into the frame. Now, I'm moving on to get a little cream cardstock to back that frame because I'm going to take some foam tape and cut it down into tiny little strips and go around every part of this window frame, the centers as well as the exterior edges. I've got that all the foam tape applied to my entire frame. I'm going to remove that release paper and get that stuck down on that cream colored or ivory colored cardstock. I'm using that little backing paper because that's what I will adhere each one of the squares to. And by using the liquid adhesive to adhere my squares, I can move them around within each window until I like how they look. So I have sped this up to quickly get all of these little pattern pieces put into my windows, and it's coming along beautifully. This window frame die it has so many possibilities. I'm thinking I can get little animals peeking out here and there, so I'll try something like that later. So the whole die cut is 4 by 5 1/4, which lends itself perfectly for an A2 size card. And then I just need a coordinating paper to back this window frame, and I will get that put on this front of an A2 size card. Now, the only other thing that I need to do to break this up a bit, I couldn't decide whether to use a sentiment or some other design to put on the front. I decided to go with the sentiment. I'm going to frame that up with a couple of little dies here and get that ready to put on the front of my card. I wanted to keep it simple but still coordinate with the colors that I used on the front of my card without detracting from all the patterned paper, so this is what I chose to do. Now it was still looking a little bit plain, so I brought over some gold paper that I'm going to frame up the sentiment with before I stick it down on that rusty colored mat. And I think that will pull the gold out that appears in some of my squares. So I'll get this put together very quickly, and that will be ready to go on the front of my card. I think just that little splash of gold is a nice little accent to bring a little life to the front of this card. Now I could put that anywhere up, down, in the center. I kind of like it in the center at a tilt. And I'll get that adhered to the front of my card and move on to the inside. Just doing a very simple Happy Thanksgiving, and I could not leave this cover alone. So I came back to it and decided to use some of those trees on the front. And I will simply fussy cut around the trees. I'm going to actually cut out quite a few of these because I wasn't sure what colors that I wanted to use on the inside, or what shape of tree would lend itself nicely to framing out my Happy Thanksgiving sentiment for the inside. Now the great thing about continuing to use the remaining pieces off this cover is that of course it all coordinates with the papers or the patterns that I used on the outside, the colors and the patterns. So that makes it really easy. Just the coordination factor alone is worth a lot. As you know, if you're a card maker, sometimes trying to get things to coordinate can take up quite a bit of your time. But by working from the same paper pad or paper stack, it makes your life a whole lot easier in that the colors coordinate and some of the patterns coordinate as well. So I will get this all put together, and that will finish off the inside of my card. You see, there are so many possibilities in reusing those covers, and so many of which I have thrown away before, and now I wish I had kept them just for this purpose. So here's a close-up look on my card. You can see the dimension that you get from the foam tape and that simple little window die. And I think that this was a really fun project, and I'll be looking at the covers of my paper pads a little more closely in the future. I'm so glad you joined me today, and I hope you will come back and see me again next week. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel or to my card blog. I have my link at the end of this video, and I would love for you to drop in again. Happy crafting, everyone!